The coffee smelled perfect. Hazelnut roast, smooth and warm, the kind that usually softened my mornings. Sunlight spilled across the marble counter of my San Francisco penthouse, glinting off the gold accents of the kitchen. Adrian had insisted we remodel together. He slid the cup toward me with that easy smile. The same smile that had charmed every woman in every room. "Extra sugar," he said, "just how you like it." I smiled back, half awake, half distracted by the flood of work emails on my tablet. My company, Hale Interiors, had just landed a deal redesigning one of the biggest luxury hotels in Napa. My mind was already moving through color palettes and layout ideas. I lifted the cup, took a sip, and froze. It tasted wrong. Bitter. Metallic, like coins at the back of my tongue. I coughed softly. "Did you switch the beans again?" He didn't look up from his phone. "No. Same blend. Maybe you're just tired." He said it casually, but his eyes flicked toward me, sharp and quick. I set the mug down, forcing a laugh. "Maybe. I'll just drink water," he shrugged, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Suit yourself, sweetheart." When he left for the gym 10 minutes later, I stared at the half-empty cup. I picked it up and tilted it slightly. At the bottom, a faint residue shimmered, white, powdery, almost invisible unless you looked close. My stomach tightened. For a long minute, I couldn't move. The clock on the wall ticked louder, the silence pressing in. I poured the coffee down the drain, watching the liquid swirl and vanish. A few grains clung to the porcelain, refusing to go. That's when it hit me. The late-night headaches, the dizziness, the nausea I'd brushed off for weeks. The doctor had called it exhaustion. Adrian had agreed, saying I was working too hard. But now, I wasn't sure. I sat at the kitchen island, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. The city outside looked calm, cable cars gliding down Market Street, the bay glittering beyond the windows. Inside, my pulse was pounding like a drum. Adrian came back 15 minutes later, gym bag slung over his shoulder, sweat glistening on his temples. "You didn't finish your coffee?" he asked lightly. "No," I said. "Didn't feel like it." He frowned for a second, just a flicker, then smiled again. "You've been stressed. I'll make you tea next time." "Tea. Right." He kissed my forehead before heading to shower. His lips felt cold. When he disappeared into the bathroom, I opened my laptop and searched metallic taste in coffee poisoning. The first result: arsenic symptoms. Metallic taste, fatigue, nausea. I stared at the screen. My reflection in the glass looked foreign, pale, composed, terrified. I didn't know what scared me more: the idea that my husband might be poisoning me, or the fact that deep down, part of me already believed he was. I closed the laptop slowly and looked toward the closed bathroom door. The sound of the running shower filled the apartment. Adrian was humming softly, the same tune he'd hummed the first night we met. That's when I whispered to myself, "What have you done?" "Vanessa." My name is Vanessa Hale. I'm 34, CEO of Hale Interiors in San Francisco. And that morning, I realized my husband might be trying to kill me. Because somewhere between that first sip of coffee and this moment, my marriage had turned from comfort to calculation. And I knew, if I wanted to live long enough to find out what he was doing, I'd have to act like I still trusted him. So I smiled when he came out of the shower. I told him I was fine. And the next morning, I made sure he drank first. If you're hooked already, hit subscribe, because this story only gets darker. And as I watched him lift the cup to his lips, smiling at me like nothing was wrong, my mind went somewhere else. Back to the night we met. Back to the moment this whole thing started. It was 2 years ago at the Fairmont Hotel, one of those charity galas where everyone wore diamonds and lies. I was there as a sponsor. Hale Interiors had redesigned the ballroom itself. I still remember the way the chandeliers reflected off the champagne glasses, 1,000 points of light dancing across the crowd. That's where Adrian found me. He was standing near the grand staircase, black suit, no tie, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You did this room, didn't you?" he asked. His voice had that calm, velvet confidence that made people turn their heads. I nodded. "How could you tell? Because it feels like you. Sharp, beautiful, a little intimidating. I laughed then, the kind of laugh that slips out when someone disarms you without trying. He said he was an architect, recently back from Milan, claimed he admired the balance between form and emotion in design. He spoke like someone who had studied me before walking over. And maybe he had. He knew exactly how to make me feel seen. He listened. He remembered tiny details, my favorite wine, the color I wore when I was nervous, the story about how my first design pitch was rejected. He showed up at every event after that. Coincidence, he said. Fate, I told myself. Within months, he was woven into my world. Dinners, photos, clients, laughter. When we got engaged, people said I finally looked happy. And maybe I did. But the cracks started small. He'd correct my assistant in front of me. Vanessa likes her coffee this way, he'd say, like he owned my preferences. He'd answer my phone if I left it on the counter. He'd suggest I take more breaks, skip meetings, delegate more power to him. It sounded like care. It was control. The first real red flag came one night when I caught him in my office at 2 a.m. He said he couldn't sleep and wanted to surprise me with flowers. But the computer screen behind him was open to my financial accounts. He laughed it off, said he was curious how much the business was growing. And I let it go. Love can make you rationalize anything. Our wedding was a performance. Gold lights, white roses, guests whispering perfect couple. He gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about forever and building a future together. But when we were alone later, standing on the balcony overlooking the city, he whispered, "You have no idea how powerful you are, Vanessa. But power attracts danger." I thought he meant other people. Now I know he meant himself. After the wedding, everything blurred. He took over small parts of the company to help. He charmed my accountant, my assistant, my board members. And slowly I became a guest in my own life. Then came the headaches, the nausea, the constant fatigue. He told everyone I was overworking again. He started handling my medication, my meals, my coffee. So when I tasted that metallic bitterness last week, deep down, part of me already knew. And this morning as he swallowed the first sip without a second thought, I smiled. Because now I knew what I was dealing with. The man who claimed to love me was watching me die in slow motion. And I wasn't about to let him finish the job. Adrian suggested the trip a week after the coffee incident. He called it a reset. "Let's just get away," he said. "No work, no phones, no stress, just us." His voice was gentle, almost pleading, and if I didn't already know better, I would have believed him. We drove to Napa on a Friday morning. The sky was low and gray, the kind of weather that felt like a warning. The vineyard estate he'd rented sat at the top of a long dirt road, hidden behind rows of olive trees. Secluded, private, too private. When we arrived, he kissed my cheek and said, "You need rest. I'll take care of everything this weekend." The house smelled faintly of lavender and cedar, perfect, curated, cold. He'd already stocked the kitchen with my favorite foods, my favorite wine, even the brand of chocolate I kept in my desk drawer. It would have been romantic if it didn't feel rehearsed. That night, we had dinner on the terrace. Candles, music, laughter that sounded almost normal. Almost. He poured the wine, watching me closely. "Do you trust me?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "What kind of question is that?" He smiled. That practiced half-smile I used to love. "Just curious. I married you, didn't I?" He laughed softly, but his eyes didn't. I pretended to take a sip. He watched me. I watched him. Later that night, I waited until he was asleep before checking his suitcase. Inside, wrapped in one of his shirts, was a small silver vial, unlabeled. When I twisted the cap open, a faint chemical smell hit me, sharp, metallic, familiar. My throat went dry. I slipped it back exactly how I found it, my hands trembling. Then I lay beside him in bed, pretending to sleep while he breathed evenly next to me. Every creak in the house felt like it was moving closer. At sunrise, he woke first. "You look pale," he said, touching my cheek. "Just tired," I whispered. He kissed my forehead. "I'll make breakfast." When he left, I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal, no Wi-Fi. The entire estate was cut off. I went to the kitchen. He was humming again, the same tune from before. He handed me a smoothie. Something light, he said. Purple. Berries, perfectly blended. And all I could see was the vial in his suitcase. He drank from his own glass first, a different one. Then set mine in front of me. I stared at it for 3 seconds too long. Drink, he said, gently. You need it. I smiled, lifted the glass, and dropped it on purpose. It shattered across the marble floor, splattering purple everywhere. Oh no, I said, clutching my stomach. I'm so clumsy lately. He froze, just a flicker, then exhaled. It's okay, I'll clean it. But I saw it in his eyes. That split second of rage before he masked it with concern. That was the moment I knew. He wasn't just trying to make me sick. He was trying to end me. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a small bag quietly and drove back to the city while he was showering. When I got home, the first thing I did was call my lawyer, discreetly. The second thing I did was order a full toxicology test through a private lab, and the third thing I did was start pretending again. Because if Adrian Hale thought he was the only one playing a game, he was about to find out just how dangerous I could be when I stopped pretending to love him. When I got back to San Francisco, the city didn't look the same. Every streetlight, every reflection in a cafe window felt like it was watching me. But I smiled through it all, because Adrian couldn't suspect a thing. He came home that night, all charm and warmth. Did you sleep okay at the villa? He asked, setting his keys down. I looked up from my laptop and smiled. Best rest I've had in weeks. Inside, my heart was pounding hard enough to bruise. While he showered, I slid the memory card from one of the tiny surveillance cameras I'd planted before leaving for Napa. I'd hidden them inside decorative vases and the charger near the bed. I told myself it was insurance, but really it was proof. The private lab I'd hired sent my toxicology results to a secure drive under a fake name. The email came at 2 a.m., arsenic detected, consistent with gradual ingestion. Estimated exposure, 4 to 6 weeks. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. It wasn't paranoia, it was attempted murder. For 2 days, I played my part. Breakfast together, shared laughter, kisses that tasted like lies. Every time he brought me coffee, I let it sit untouched until he left for the gym, then poured it down the drain. He never noticed, or maybe he did, and wanted me to think I was safe. During those days, I met quietly with my lawyer, Elliot Crane, a friend I trusted more than family. He'd handled all my contracts for years, and he was one of the few people who knew how to keep things invisible. I told him everything. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he said, "Vanessa, if you're right, we can get him arrested." "Not yet," I said. "I need him to dig his own grave first." We started transferring my assets, silently, carefully, out of the joint accounts Adrian had touched. Every signature, every wire transfer looked routine. Meanwhile, I installed cameras in the penthouse. One above the stove, one near the medicine cabinet, one pointed at the coffee station. If he tried again, I'd have him on record. And he did. 3 nights later, I came home late from a client dinner. Adrian was in the kitchen, humming. He didn't hear me at first. He was leaning over my mug, emptying something from a small silver vial, the same one from Napa, and stirring it gently until it dissolved. Then he rinsed the spoon, set everything neatly back in place, and smiled when he saw me. "You're home early," I smiled back. "Couldn't wait to see you." I sat at the island, watching him move, his sleeves rolled up, veins visible, every gesture rehearsed. He slid the cup toward me. "Hazelnut," he said. "Extra sugar." I reached for it, steady, calm, and said, "Actually, I'm not in the mood for coffee tonight." His smile faltered. "Just a flicker." "Since when?" "Since now." He laughed too lightly. "You're acting strange." "Am I?" I tilted my head, meeting his eyes. "You sure it's me?" That was the first time the mask slipped. A tiny muscle in his jaw twitched. Later, when he went to bed, I took the mug to my safe room and sealed it in a lab bag. The next morning, it was gone. The cupboard looked perfect, too perfect. He'd noticed. That day, he started hovering more, calling my assistant, asking where I went. He even accidentally stopped by my office twice unannounced. He thought he was tightening control. he didn't realize he was walking into a trap. Because 2 days later, the footage from the kitchen camera came in, clear as glass. Adrian Hale, my husband, pouring white powder into my drink and smiling. I forwarded the file to Elliot with one sentence: "Let's end this right." And for the first time in months, I actually slept. But what I didn't know yet was that Adrian already suspected I knew, and his next move would make everything explode. The next morning, the air in the penthouse felt heavier. Not in the obvious way. Nothing looked different. But silence had a weight to it. A kind that pressed against your chest and whispered, "He knows." Adrian made breakfast, like always. Eggs, toast. He even hummed that same stupid tune again. But when I looked closely, I realized he wasn't humming. He was watching me, reflection in the oven glass, eyes sharp and patient. He set the plate down in front of me. "Eat," he said softly. And something about the tone, the command under the sweetness, made my throat tighten. I pushed the food around with my fork. "Not hungry," he smiled. Small and deliberate. "You haven't been hungry in weeks." "I've been busy." He leaned closer, resting his elbows on the counter. "Busy doing what?" "Vanessa." The way he said my name, slow, dangerous, told me everything. He wasn't asking. He was warning. I kept my voice light. "Work. You know how clients are." He stared for a moment longer, then stood and walked to the window. "You know," he said, "I had a dream last night. You were leaving me, just walking out. Didn't even say goodbye." I stayed silent. He turned his head slightly. "You wouldn't do that, would you?" Inside, I wanted to scream, but outside I smiled. "Of course not." He studied my face, trying to decide if he believed me. And then he laughed. "You're right, you wouldn't. You love me too much." That was the moment I realized I wasn't living with a husband anymore. I was living with a predator. Later that day, I met Elliot in a quiet parking structure downtown. He had the lab results, the footage, everything in a sealed folder. "Vanessa, we can go to the police tonight," he said. I shook my head. "Not yet. If I disappear now, he'll find me. He has access to my accounts, my phone. I need a clean break, one that looks like his idea." Elliot hesitated. "You're playing with fire." I smiled faintly. "Then I'll make sure he burns first." That night, I started setting my stage. I made dinner, his favorite steak, and truffle mashed potatoes. I opened his preferred wine, played his playlist, and wore the same black dress I'd worn on our anniversary. He walked in, surprised. "What's this?" "Just us," I said sweetly. "No work, no distractions. I missed you." He melted into the role instantly. Men like him always do. The illusion of control was his drug. We ate, laughed, and reminisced. I let him pour the wine, pretending not to notice when he topped off my glass more often than his own. By the third pour, I knew what he'd done. The faint, metallic tang hit my nose before my tongue. He was poisoning me. Again. Only this time, I let him think it was working. I swayed slightly, blinking, as if dizzy. "I don't feel so good." Concern flashed across his face. "Fake. Careful. You're pale. Sit down." He guided me to the couch, hand on my shoulder. "I'll call the doctor." I grabbed his wrist weakly. "No. Stay." He smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." The next few minutes were slow, silent, tense. I let my eyes flutter closed, pretending to drift. He checked my pulse, whispering, "You shouldn't have fought me. You should have just stayed obedient." My heart hammered, but I stayed still. When he finally walked to the sink to wash the glass, I opened my eyes and smiled, because what he didn't know was that I'd switched the glasses before dinner. He'd been drinking his own poison. I stood up slowly, steadying myself. He turned, confused. "Vanessa?" I met his eyes. "How's the wine, Adrian?" For the first time, he looked scared. "What did you—" I cut him off, just returning the favor. He staggered forward, the realization dawning too late. His face paled, his hand gripping the counter. You're insane." "No," I whispered. "Just done." He lunged toward me, but his body gave out before he reached me, collapsing hard against the marble floor. I stared down at him, the man who tried to kill me, the man who thought love meant control, and for a long, silent minute, I didn't move. Then I knelt down, and whispered in his ear, "You should have never taught me how to lie." I stood up, wiped the counter clean, and called Elliot. "Plan B," I said. "It's done." But as I looked at Adrian's motionless body, I didn't feel relief. I felt something colder, like the story wasn't over yet. Because in the distance, the faintest sound came from his phone, a text notification from an unknown number. "Is she dead yet?" The phone kept buzzing on the floor beside Adrian's hand. I hesitated before picking it up. The screen was smeared with wine, the message glowing bright. "Is she dead yet?" The number wasn't saved, but the contact photo was blank, just a gray silhouette. My pulse quickened as I unlocked it using his fingerprint. More messages appeared. "You're taking too long. Make it look natural this time. Once it's done, you'll get the rest." My stomach twisted. There was someone else. I scrolled higher. Dozens of messages. Weeks worth. Each one colder than the last. Detailed instructions, payments, updates about my schedule, my habits. And then at the top of the thread, one message made my knees buckle. "She'll be out of the picture soon. You'll get what's yours, Mom." Mom. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Adrian's mother, Vanessa Hale, the woman who had begged me to marry her son, the one who said I was the best thing that ever happened to this family. I dropped the phone onto the counter, bile rising in my throat. It made sense now. The sudden pressure to combine our companies, her constant interference in my finances, the accidental meetings with my lawyers. She didn't just want control of Hale Interiors. She wanted me gone. I grabbed my coat, keys, and drove. The night outside was black and wet, the rain smearing neon lights into streaks across the windshield. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I turned into her estate, the same mansion where we'd celebrated Christmas last year. All laughter and champagne. Now, it looked like a fortress. She opened the door before I even knocked, wearing a silk robe and a smirk. "Vanessa, what a surprise. Shouldn't you be at home?" I stepped inside slowly. "You mean your son's body?" Her smile didn't fade. For a split second, there was a flicker of something. Not fear, not guilt, annoyance. "You always were dramatic," she said. "You should have just signed the transfer papers." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You hired your son to kill me." "I guided him," she said calmly. "Adrian was weak, emotional. You were never going to let go of control. But the company belongs in the Hale name, not to some girl who just married into it." My hands curled into fists. "You really thought you could poison me out of my own life?" She tilted her head, unbothered. "It worked on your father, didn't it?" The world tilted. "What did you just say?" Her eyes glittered. "You think heart attacks just happen? He left everything to you, the house, the shares, the business. You were always in the way." I stepped closer, shaking. "You killed him. I cleaned up what should have been mine." Her voice dropped. "And if you had just played your role, I wouldn't have had to clean you up too." Lightning cracked outside, spilling white light through the window. For a heartbeat, she looked like something out of a nightmare. Calm, elegant, monstrous. Then I smiled. "Funny thing about arsenic," I said softly. "It doesn't just disappear from the body. It builds up, detectable for weeks." Her smirk faltered. "What?" I pulled a small recorder from my coat pocket. The red light blinked quietly. "Say hi to the police, Lorraine. You've been talking for a while." Her eyes widened. Elliot's been recording the whole thing. The cameras, the audio, all of it's already on a secure drive. They'll love your little confession." She lunged forward, grabbing for the device. But I was fast. I stepped back, her fingers brushing empty air. "Goodbye, Lorraine," I whispered. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me. By the time the police arrived, she was sitting in her living room, staring at the recorder like it was a ghost. 3 months later, Hale Interiors reopened under a new name, VH Designs. The company flourished. My father's legacy was safe. Adrian's estate was dissolved, and Lorraine was serving a 20. I stood in my office one morning, coffee steaming on the desk, hazelnut roast, smooth and warm. I took a sip, smiled, and whispered to myself, "Perfect." The sunlight spilled across the marble counter, glinting off the gold accents, the same ones Adrian had chosen. But this time, it was my kitchen, my company, my life, and I'd earned every single piece of it. Thank you for listening.